The Giants knew that Rafael Devers' transition to first base was going to be a work in progress. They knew that it wasn't going to be perfect. They knew that it wasn't going to be seamless because, after all, prior to Tuesday, this is a position that Rafael Devers had never played in a major league game. It was a position that he's never played in a minor league game. And yes, while he has played across the diamond over at third base, and while there is a little bit of overlap between third base and first base, and this is something that we saw earlier this season with Casey Schmidt when he himself made that transition. First base it's a new position entirely. Even for all of the similarities, there are just simply different boxes that Devers has to check over at that position. The Giants knew that this wasn't going to be a seamless transition. Devers himself knew that this wasn't going to be a seamless transition. But the first two games that Devers had over at first base went pretty smoothly, all things considered. We talked about his first game in Atlanta where he had 4 chances to make a putout, and he made all 4 of those chances. He kind of get those chest-high throws where he wasn't challenged all that much. I can't remember the specifics of yesterday's game, but there wasn't really that many opportunities either yesterday as well. But today was the first game where Devers was truly challenged as a first baseman, where he got not entirely the full gamut of what you can expect as a first baseman, but certainly a lot more than the standard grounders that are hit to you or the balls being thrown to you. He got those in-betweeners. He got the plays where he had to turn double plays. And in short, it was a bit of an adventure for Devers as the Giants lose to the New York Mets 2-1 here on Saturday night at Oracle Park. And they're now looking at the possibility of potentially being swept on Sunday. And we'll get into exactly how Sunday is going to function as far as the pitching goes. We'll get into that in a moment. But the biggest, well, to back up a little bit, Devers only had one official error in this game, and that was when Juan Soto hit a pretty hard grounder to him over at first base. He muffed the ball, and Soto was able to reach base at first. But he had a couple other miscues along the way, some kind of reminders that, yes, this is something that is going to be, again, a work in progress, that this position is entirely new to Devers. The biggest of which was in the top of the 6th inning. The Mets had runners at first and second with 1 out, and Brett Beatty hits a grounder over to him. Devers fields the ball and spins to fire and throw at second to get the force. It's probably unlikely that they would have gotten the double play, but maybe if they turned it really quickly, they would have had a shot at it. But the main part is that Devers is attempting to throw the ball over to second base, and he fumbles that transition, and all he can settle for is the out at first, which puts runners on second and third with 2 outs. The very next batter, Mark Vientos, lines a double into the left field corner that ends up scoring both of those runs. Obviously, we don't know the potential butterfly effect, but that runner was at second base as a result of Devers being unable to make the play. And when Melvin talked about Devers playing first base after the game, he did say that he was glad that Devers was getting all of these opportunities to do this because, as we've mentioned previously, there's only a specific amount that you can. There's a limit to what you can do. As far as doing this in practice, like you can go over all of the scenarios, you can go over everything when it's in a controlled environment, but until you get into a game, you're not really going to have that true sense of the speed. You're not going to really have that true sense of the situations. So while it was a rough game from Devers, in that sense, it did provide him with a lot of opportunities that, frankly, he just hasn't had up to this point. Another example of how this was a bit of a rough night for Devers is, I think it was in the 4th inning, Beatty was actually at the plate, too, in this situation as well, where I think it's runners on second and third. There's a weakly hit grounder hit to the right side of the infield. It's closer to Robbie Ray than it is to Rafael Devers, but it's hit in between the pitcher's mound and first base. Ray obviously goes for the ball because it's hit just, a couple steps to his left, but Devers charges hard for that ball, and it's only after taking a couple hard steps that he realizes that, Ray is going to get to that ball before him, and there's no one to cover first base. He tries to retreat, tries to go back to first base, but by the time he gets to the base, he's not able to properly set his feet. Ray flicks a throw over to first base, and Beatty's ultimately safe. That sets up bases loaded with no outs, and Ray was able to get out of that jam, due in part to an actually nifty play by Devers over at first base. After Ray struck out Vientos to put it at bases loaded with 1 out, I'm forgetting who hits. I think it's Francisco Alvarez. Hits the grounder to Matt Chapman at third base. Chapman fields it, steps on the bag for 1, throws across his body over to Devers at first base, and then Devers makes a pick to get them out of the inning. So a little redemption for Devers just in that inning itself. There was also a play, I think it was the top of the 5th inning, where Brandon Nimmo hits a grounder at him, a pretty standard grounder. He fields it, well, not necessarily fields it. He knocks it down and then tries to grab it, but as he's grabbing, he kind of kicks it or flicks it towards the base, and he's kind of scrambling. Where he grabs it and he tags the bag at first for the out, and he's kind of laughing at himself as he's going back to his position. I think that was the extent of his night. There may have been another pick in there, but as you can tell, it was a very adventurous night for Rafael Devers. Again, just his 3rd career game at first base. And when we asked him, after the game about the possibility of what it could mean for him to have more games, to have more months of experience, especially going into the offseason, he said that this is a part of his game that he's going to work on. This is a part of his game that he thinks is going to ultimately be better. And Devers' pretty adventurous night could have gotten relegated to being a secondary story if the Giants' offense was able to produce, was able to get more than the 1 run, but like I mentioned, they only end up with the 1 run. They went 0 for 8 with runners in scoring position tonight. This comes after they went 0 for 8 with runners in scoring position on Friday, so 0 for 16 on the series overall. There were a couple just unfortunately hard hit balls that were, it was atom balls, it was right at guys. And there was a couple in the 9th inning that were particularly unlucky. With 1 out in the bottom of the 9th, the Giants are facing Edwin Diaz. Jung-Hoo Lee hits a ball to right center field. It goes off the bricks. It was about maybe 2 feet higher. That ball would have cleared the right center field fence and been a homer. And if you go on Baseball Savant, the only ballpark in which that would not have been a homer is right here. But the Giants do end up with a double with 1 out. They have a runner in scoring position and an opportunity to tie the game. I'm forgetting how the 2nd out gets recorded, but Patrick Bailey steps to the plate. 2 outs, runner on second, bottom of the 9th inning, 1-run game. Hits an absolute bullet towards right field, but Mets first baseman Pete Alonso makes a leaping catch, instantly ends the game right there. Giants lose 2-1. Bailey slams the helmet down. Just the kind of cherry on top of what has been a frustrating 2 games for the Giants as far as not having offense, as far as an inability to hit with runners in scoring position. Now, as far as Sunday's game, like I mentioned yesterday, there was a very strong possibility that it was going to be a bullpen game. It is going to be a bullpen game, and Matt Gage is going to get the start for the Giants. The most that Gage has pitched in an outing this year, either the majors or the minors, are the 2 2/3 innings that he pitched for the Detroit Tigers AAA affiliate, but I don't think anybody's expecting Gage to provide more than potentially 2 innings. The Giants will have Carson Seymour as their potential bulk guy. He's made 15 starts with AAA Sacramento, fared well in the PCL, especially given that the PCL is, of course, a hitter-friendly league. And then I would imagine once they go from Gage to Seymour, they'll kind of go from there, see the context of the game, whether they need to use their higher leverage relief guys, whether they need to use another multi-inning guy. It's kind of one of those things where we'll see how the game progresses and where they go from there. And it is a very interesting coincidence that the 2 Sunday night baseball games that the Giants have had, they've had to use openers instead of traditional starters. Obviously, the first one of those games being at Dodger Stadium on the Sunday where the Rafael Devers trade happens. Kyle Harrison, of course, was slated to start that game. He was part of the trade package, so he can't make the start. Sean Jelly has to make his first major league start in a very odd context, and I think he goes like 3 2/3 innings. And then as far as Monday, that's still up in the air as well. A roster move is going to be made prior to that game. Who's potentially optioned, what options they go for, it remains to be seen, but they do have options in AAA Sacramento. Again, Kaiwei Tang, Carson Wisenhunt. Those are some of the names that we could potentially see on Monday based on how things go on Sunday.